Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Ben Casnocha, partner at Village Global, and on behalf of Ann and Amrit and the whole Village team, welcome to another outstanding afternoon of Village founders and friends, and of course, Howie Liu from Airtable. Now, Howie has raised hundreds of millions of dollars of venture money, has built a business now doing hundreds of millions of dollars of annualized revenue. You've been at it for more than a decade.
Yep.
Who here is an Airtable user on a somewhat regular basis?
Great.
Okay. And who here is like an enterprise customer or uses it organizationally wide? Okay, so we have some work to do to convert some of the...
Shame on the rest of you.
And who here has Airtable as a customer? Dion, okay, so we've got some, you know...
Yeah, we got like, what's it called? The
some give and
balance
take.
Of trade.
Yes,
going
exactly,
on. Yeah.
yes. Now, Howie, so almost everyone in the room has used Airtable as a user. Some of us are enterprise customers. What common misperceptions might we have about the business or the product that you want to clear up up front?
So we've been on a very long journey, as you said. I mean, the product's been launched since 2015. I actually started the company about 3 years prior to that. So we've been around for a while. And I think what's been consistent but not necessarily understood is that we've always wanted to be more of an app platform than a collaboration tool. So when we first launched, we had to obviously pick an MVP that was simple enough to build quickly, although quickly for us was like 2.5 years.
You spent 2.5 years before you shipped a product.
Correct, yeah. Actually, weirdly parallel timeline to some other great PLG companies like Figma and others, which we can come back to, and why I think that was a really interesting moment for creating this new grade of desktop-rich experiences that were web-based, collaborative, instantly shareable, and kind of disrupted certain work patterns. But we spent 2.5 years building this product. And the reason for that was this was not meant to just be like a simple project management tool or even like a spreadsheet replacement, but really like an app platform that was way easier to use. Now the V1 looked like a spreadsheet. That was partly on purpose because we wanted to make it really intuitive. You could just start using it, didn't have to learn a new UI, but then also partly because we didn't have the time to build out the interface layer or additional views.
You didn't have the time after 2.5 years.
Yeah, I mean, hey, we were working, methodically,
and it makes sense, and obviously it worked out for you. You built this incredible tech infrastructure. But just on this meta point, if a founder, because you do some angel investing, if a founder came to you and said, "Howie, here's my pitch, and I'm going to spend the first 3 years building it, and then I'll start shipping to the real
Well, don't
world."
lead with that part. I mean, talk about the big.
So what has to be true? What kinds of products lend themselves to that type of formation versus the lean startup iterative?
Yeah, I mean, my belief now in hindsight, and I had a very short-lived startup before Airtable called eTax, ended up getting acqui-hired by Salesforce. So I only have a data point of 2, maybe 1.2. But my belief is that either you have to have very strong conviction in the end game, and ideally even the mid game of the company, meaning if you're building SpaceX, you have enormous confidence that there's massive market opportunity at the end of the road, right? If you can really make a cost-effective, safe, scalable rocket, there is a market for rocket payloads that are cheap, right? And so there's a big payoff if you can do this. You also know you have durable advantages because other people are not going to go and just enter into this the space really quickly. So the mid and end game are strong, but then the kind of beginning of the game is really hard. I think Airtable looks kind of like that, where we thought really methodically about the space. I mean, the premise was really, from working at Salesforce, realizing that there's a large class of business applications that really need a platform, not a solution, to be served well, as in you need to customize the data model per customer. Every customer has a different workflow, and maybe it's just a long tail use case that doesn't warrant a really good best-of-breed vertical solution like a Workday for HRIS, right, or Salesforce for CRM. And even Salesforce itself did a really good job of serving customers, not because they built all the features for CRM, but because they built a platform that could be customized for every customer install. So that was the insight, and I felt pretty convicted based on, both working within Salesforce, doing some early customer validation, talking to customers, understanding what are the different workflows you're doing in spreadsheets or underserved by current products to kind of validate the market. Obviously, you can never be 100%. But I felt pretty confident if we could nail the execution of a platform that could serve all these use cases with a real kind of application or relational database model, that we would be differentiated, we'd be competitively advantaged. So it wouldn't be easy. I mean, the fact that it took us so long to build it meant that it wouldn't be something that other companies could just really quickly fast follow, right?
And by the way, how many companies did you talk to when you were doing, over the 2.5 years, how many prospective customers did you talk to?
Probably like dozens, not hundreds.
Wow.
And that was, do you think that's a lot or
It seems like a small number, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you're just saying.
What do people think?
It's
Does that seem like a lot or
gosh,
lower?
you didn't build multiple views, you only talked to 12 customers.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of the lazy startup approach.
Yeah.
No, I mean, on that point, I think of it as so in math, there's this concept of like eigenvectors, which is where you have a really large, multi-dimensional search space. But to reduce the dimensionality of the space, you can pick like vectors or dimensions that best represent that space, right? So like, to make it very simple, like imagine a 3D space, you have a bunch of like, kind of dots throughout it. Well, find like the 2D axis, the plane that best captures the spatial coordinates of all the dots, right? If they actually kind of naturally tend towards, a certain plane. And so I think the idea here is, you don't have to go and collect every single dot, first of all, across every single dimension to understand like, the diversity of customer use cases you want to solve for. And I think like if you're picking 12, frankly, even like 3, and I'll come back to like how we apply this concept even today to product development. But I think if you're picking like 12 customers across a wide range of industries, company sizes, or whatever like the space that you want to, kind of fit well into, it's pretty unlikely that you're going to overfit like exactly to just those 12, and that every other company that looks like them is going to be completely different, or like your solution is going to be inapplicable, right? There's always kind of this, healthy balance between, you want to collect more data, but I don't personally think you have to go and like, get 100 customers to validate the premise. If you have 12 or even like 5, pretty representative ones that are not all like weird outliers that are super early adoptive and like nobody else will ever look like them.
Now, in the early years of Airtable, there's a lot of product-led growth and kind of bottoms-up adoption.
Yeah.
Raise your hand here if you have a product-led growth strategy for distribution enterprise side. So we have several. And Julie, we're going to come to your question soon that you submitted for Howie.
Yeah.
More recently, you've been wining and dining some of the biggest CEOs in the Fortune 500, talking about wide-scale enterprise adoption. Talk through the evolution of the self-serve side of the business to enterprise, and how would you advise founders who are thinking about a PLG motion in the early days? Because, by the way, it is the dream. 99 VC pitches out of 10 have in the enterprise today have founders saying it's PLG, it's bottoms-up adoption, we don't have to hire salespeople. And then usually they end up hiring lots and lots of salespeople. So talk through that intellectual journey for you.
I think there's pros and cons. So I wouldn't say PLG is like a categorically better growth model. I think the benefit obviously is like, you can have way better unit economics, like you're not paying a cost of sale to acquire customers, especially if you're getting top of funnel organically, then you don't even have to pay marketing costs, right, CAC, to like acquire those customers. So you can literally have free growth. And in our case, like had we wanted to go and run like a lifestyle kind of cash flow generative business, we probably could have operated the PLG engine, like that product, like up to well beyond 100 million in revenue scale with like maybe less than 30 people, which means like it just could have been like a very cash generative product. In fact, we got to tens of millions of revenue. So we raised our Series C, our first unicorn round, I think right as we were crossing 15 million, but like very fast growing, like over 100% year on year. And we had like, I think literally like 25 people, and we didn't even
25 employees.
Like 25 employees total. Wow. And we could have just kept it close to there. Because again, like we didn't need to go and like hire large armies of salespeople. We could have automated a lot of support stuff. And obviously you want to continue maintaining and evolving the product, but like we could have done that on a skeleton crew. So there is an advantage of PLG for sure. It's like very efficient. I think the disadvantage is that sometimes you lack clarity of who the buyer is, because like you're just getting it, they're coming to you. And PLG companies can be verticalized. So many of you may have verticalized PLG companies where it's a specific type of customer in a specific use case and industry that's coming to you organically. But I think more often than not, a lot of the PLG companies are also more diffuse in their top of funnel because they're not going and targeting the customers they want.
You say, Howie, that it's important to have an almost surgical understanding of your company and really understand the key metrics that drive the business. And Villages and Dwayne likes to talk a lot about the importance of instrumenting your business and really understanding the levers. Talk about what you've learned as a CEO on this journey. What metrics do you track today? What metrics were you tracking at the beginning? How did you determine what the key levers were?
Yeah, I would say it's been a constant journey, and I don't think at any point I don't think I've ever felt like, oh, we figured it out. It's like perfect, right? And I think, I mean, there's frameworks, like obviously you can do OKRs, like there's Salesforce V2 bombs, like, you know, Amazon like input metrics. And I think we've tried like some version of all of these.
What is Amazon's input metrics?
So the idea is basically, instead of just tracking against output metrics, which would be like the revenue, you know, of our business, input metrics are the basically levers that you believe most like drive the output, right?
Yeah.
So one input might be for them like, okay, how many, like what's the engagement, you know, on this specific type of item page for this category? Like how long do people spend like looking at the product on the books page as a kind of leading metric that they want to focus their execution on? Because, you know, it's hard to, if you just say like, okay, grow revenue, well, like it's hard to know what to do about it. Whereas if you say like, okay, you got to increase engagement on the listing page, then you can say, okay, well, I want to build like a more interactive experience to like page through different photos of the book or see a preview or that kind of thing.
Makes sense. By the way, just on V2 Mom, do people know V2 Mom from Salesforce? It is kind of amazing. I feel like 20 years ago, Mark Benioff came up with something that sounded nice to say. Like V2 Mom's kind of a fun phrase to say. And then it remains the governing framework inside that entire organization, and now it's been emulated. And you kind of step back and think like just some like 20 plus years ago, he came up with this. It kind of worked at that scale. I'm not sure like companies around the world should emulate that. So it is funny, sometimes these frameworks, like Salesforce has been very, very successful. I'm not sure it's because of V2 Mom, and there are probably other or better frameworks for organizing.
Well, here's actually my punchline is I actually think the framework does not matter. Like you need some kind of framework. You can't have like chaos. Well, so what I would say is like, and this is inspired by like, you know, Atomic Habits and the whole idea of like identity formation actually matters more than like framework. Like framework in a health context would be like, okay, I'm gonna have a routine, means I'm gonna go to the gym these days and like not eat these things and blah, blah, blah. Like, but it turns out you could do that, but adherence to the framework, especially when like, you know, exceptions arise, you're traveling, whatever, is where it all breaks down, right? And I mean, similar to like, you know, let's say for product development, jobs to be done is a great framework. It can be a great framework, but I've seen it applied really poorly, like at many companies where it's like, you literally check the boxes on like, what's the job to be done for this customer? Like who is the protagonist? You know, what are they like? And so my point is like, these frameworks can all be applied in a really poor way if you don't fill it in with like really the right, you know, framing of, you know, the initiatives you're pursuing, why you're doing them. And then more importantly, I think having the urgency and accountability for follow through, right? And I don't think that gets solved with just a framework like you can do RACI and say like, okay, here's the responsible party and the accountable party and like the like, you know, informed and so on. But I found like, and you know, we've tried all these things, and I think what I've found is much more impactful consistently is having leaders, and leaders I mean not just at the top level like exec team, but at any level, who, you know, just really are motivated to figure out what matters and are able to kind of navigate ambiguity. I love this book, Extreme Ownership, by like these SEAL team captains, right? And if you think about like that kind of context, it's life and death, high urgency, and battlefield conditions are changing dynamically, right? Like things are never how you think they're going to be when you go into a battlefield situation. And so that metaphor is really powerful because it's more about the embodiment of, you know, kind of leadership where you're able to make game time decisions in the face of constantly being curious and learning and like, you know, gathering intel.
Well, and I want to come back to the metrics thing, but I think you're making a really important point, which is following through on stated values or frameworks matters a lot. So to defend V2 Mom, like the genius of the V2 Mom framing is it's memorable, right? Like here we are talking about it.
For sure.
And just if because the ring of the phrase resonates, it's like Tom Friedman coining the world is flat. After people have been talking about globalization for hundreds of years. But hey, the world is flat, that sticks. So like coming up, that's why I think names of companies and products, deeply underrated, right? The name of your company, the name of your products.
100%.
I think Airtable is a great name. I think Village is a great name for venture fund. I think these names do really matter. Entrepreneurs should spend more time.
Yellow all the time. It's like glued in my mind.
Howie was at our gathering where he was supposed to do a one-on-one brain date with Mira Murati the day before she was announced. Or she was getting the news that day. She's becoming CEO of
I think she was like literally probably pulled into like some emergency briefing meeting.
He took it personally, but then realized she had beat up.
I wasn't for
better reason. But okay, so coming back to Airtable, what are the key metrics that you measure today?
So, you know, at the very top level, like starting from output, like obviously we care about revenue, we care about NDR. NDR actually I think is one of the most important metrics, especially once you've gotten past the initial product market fit stage. like the difference between a company that can continue to compound at a very high rate, like take ServiceNow, I mean, it's still growing at an incredible rate, at 10 billion in revenue. And part of that is because they have really high NDR. Like they can just take every customer cohort and keep growing it. And so for us, like tracking our NDR is actually one of the most important things. Now, obviously, that's again like very like lagging. We look at the end-to-end funnel in a way that tracks like the top of funnel web traffic. Like we look at the number of like what we call multi-user active workspaces. So in the self-serve like top of growth engine, like how many of these email domains or users have come in and then activated and then added at least one collab. So it's a multi-user use case. And of course, like tracking that through the funnel. We track against specific initiatives that we're really kind of trying to make progress on. So AI is a big one for us. So we're looking at a lot of like the AI usage for our customers who are most active on AI. I tend to think it's not like sometimes like in the 0 to 1, and not just like a company going like 0 to 1, but like even for a new initiative, like trying to break through on finding product market fit for a new capability of ours, right? Like if we're launching a solution on top of the platform, or if we're kind of launching these new AI capabilities, that's a 0 to 1 initiative. And I think for that, you care about more than just like the top line metric, like how much AI revenue are we generating, how many customers, et cetera. You also care about like kind of debugging and understanding like who are these customers, what are their use cases. It's much more like the lean startup, like kind of really rapidly learn and figure out like what are the hot spots there, and then how do you kind of lean into it and fan the flame. So for instance, I just set up a auto emailer today that's going to take batched sets of all of our top most active AI customers and basically email them from my actual email account, and I'll actually get the response asking them, what are you doing with Airtable and what's your use case? And I actually did this back way in the day when we founded the company and when we launched for the first time. But that kind of qualitative insight, I think, is as valuable for the 0 to 1 kind of breakthrough initiatives as the overall KPIs, right? So
yeah, it's the Jeff Bezos line. It's always day one.
Yeah.
And even in a big organization like Airtable, there are all these brand new 0 to 1 initiatives.
Exactly.
Let's talk about AI first startups being funded today.
Yep.
And many of them have companies like Airtable on their sites. Not the entire business, but different verticals that they could attack you on. How do you think about that competitive dynamic? And if you're, because you can imagine if you're starting Airtable today in this AI moment, it probably would have been a pretty different 0 to 1 launch story, right? How do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think we would have taken 2.5 years to build the product. No, I think we did build a lot of the foundational architecture of Airtable, and that has continued to pay off as an advantage. I just think if you're coming into the space now, you couldn't afford to do the same. You'd have to take a different route to building the MVP, which actually I think is what's happening. So I think you're seeing a lot of products, AI products, that are taking a much more agentic approach to begin with, which in some ways has, like a different and maybe simpler, like 0 to 1, kind of product building challenge than like trying to build like a completely new like database engine and then creating like, the workflow layer and like the UI, et cetera, on top of that. And I think there's pros and cons. I think a lot of the agentic products will do well. I mean, some of them are already taking off, like developer copilots. Like there's a lot of, kind of revenue growth happening out there. And a lot of like market TAM to be seized. For us, though, we're going to lean into our foundational advantage, and we're going to use that to kind of maintain an edge and actually to gain, more value from AI by deploying it into data and workflows that we have, right? So, the idea is in Airtable, you're already putting things like your product roadmap or content production pipeline at media companies, or it could be like all your marketing campaigns at a really large, retail company. And, since you already have that in there, and it's very, it's a very good structure for that data and the workflows, and it's got kind of a wide footprint of people and using that use case. It's very easy for us to introduce AI into that workflow, right? So the data is already well structured. You can then take that, put that into a prompt, and then generate some output.
And how do you think about human in the loop versus fully automated?
So I think for some use cases, which are not the ones that we serve, you can do fully automated, right? Like I think support will be one of the ones where, especially for simpler, more linear support workflows. I mean, look at DoorDash, right? Like I don't even need to talk to AI, let alone a human, when I go and ask for help on DoorDash, because it's very simple in terms of the decision tree, right? So it's like my order came late, like, okay, hit this button, hit that button, auto refund, right? It just like it tells you, it does it automatically for you. It's just a simple rule-based system, and I think that works. And so therefore, you can imagine like with a little bit more reasoning capability, you can actually automate slightly more advanced support workflows quite easily. So I think there's like certain verticals like that where it's very linear. It is something that's like fully end-to-end solvable with AI that will be solved. I think for most forms of knowledge work, there's too much non-linearity and too much like kind of fuzziness in the system. And that is where like the human steering, the human in the loop, the human not just to like perform a task for the AI, but vice versa, where the human's kind of orchestrating the whole thing. The human's like checking the outputs of the AI, especially when you have like, high sensitivity, high stakes use cases where you don't just want the AI to like, go like in this recursive loop to like, the complete solution. You want to have checks along the way. I think that's where, AI I see as really much more of a really powerful, function call that you can embed into different parts of the workflow, but you absolutely need the data and the human in the loop, aspect of it for it to fully solve the problem.
We have a lot of companies here selling to enterprise with an AI-centric product. Do you think there's enterprise fatigue around the AI promise? So much hype the last year or two.
Yeah.
Some would predict that the next 12 to 18 months is going to be this kind of big step back where companies say, okay, we scratched our itch of curiosity. Where really is value showing up? And actually, it's sometimes astonishing when you double click a little bit in these bigger companies, how little AI they're actually using. Right? There's press releases.
It's like the water all around me, like not a drop, right?
Indeed, yeah. So where is the use case today, enterprise, where AI is actually having an impact, and where do you see it going next year?
So I completely agree with that premise. I mean, we see it in a lot of our enterprise customers ourselves, where like there's a backlog of it used to be like a year and a half from now. It was like, okay, like we just want to buy every AI product that we can because there's not that many offering it to that are coming to enterprise, right? There just weren't that many products that were going to enterprise a year and a half ago, and now like that space has just been so explosively inundated. So I think the enterprises are saying like, whoa, like now before we just wanted to like go and experiment and learn from like the early couple products that were available to us. Now we're getting pitched by every existing vendor with their AI add-on, whether it's Salesforce or Slack or whatever. Or like there's a net new AI vendor that's trying to pitch us on their thing. And I think there has been also a lot of like, hype and promise around like, this is the AI solution that will solve everything, right? You just, put it across your entire org and, it will solve all your problems of AI. And I think the reality is like, of course, like, these companies are not seeing massive, business outcomes, right? They're not seeing like double-digit, percent or even like basis points of cost reduction across the org as a result of these AI deployments. And so it's kind of like, okay, when the rubber meets the road, we're not seeing the results. So I do think there is a reckoning that's already happening now. And
so what advice would you give to early stage startups when confronted with that reckoning with selling into enterprise?
I mean, we're doing the same, which is we are selling against specific use cases. And in our case, because we're a platform, it doesn't have to be just one, but we're going in and selling against specific use cases where we have proven value, both as a platform, period, like for that use case, but also where the AI has a clear role to play, right? So as an example, like one of the use cases we sell to is product operations. So if you have a digital product group within a large company, it could be like a large retail company, large tech company, whatever. You have these large software product groups. Maybe you're building the e-commerce platform for your company, and first of all, we win that use case frequently because Airtable is a good flexible platform for that use case, like Salesforce is flexible for CRM. But then on top of that, we'll come in with an AI point of view of saying, look, what if you could take all of your customer feedback from different support channels, from like app review sites, from like so on, and ingest it all with AI and basically come up with insights. You can triage certain feature requests and like, here's the specific customer, maybe tag via Gong call that is requesting this kind of feature or wants you to do this kind of thing. And so that's a very specific application where we can actually go and say like, here's the value you're going to get, and you're going to
look. And I think you're making an age-old point in a sense, which is your advice is focus on what the customer problem actually is and solve the customer problem. Which sometimes I think in this AI hype cycle, founders can lose sight of that, right?
Sure.
Like AI, whiz bang, you should buy it, versus obsession with understanding the customer need and articulating the solution.
Yeah, and I think it has to do with like, I mean, maybe we falsely thought, or like, there was this like feeling of like we're in the tornado of AI adoption, but I think we're actually in the chasm. And so this hype was actually just like, to your point, like it was relatively ungrounded in real business value. Now, at some point, we may get to the point where it's like well understood what are the categories of AI value exist, and then you just like buy, the obvious.
How long is the chasm going to be if you had to predict?
Well, it's hard to predict because I think unlike most other technological disruptions, this one, the technology itself is progressing so fast, right? So it's like one thing when mobile came out and it's like, okay, like what are the mobile first applications we need to deploy into the enterprise? Like, well, mobile didn't change that, like the form factor and the kind of like, affordances and enabled like didn't really change that much after the initial innovation. Whereas obviously we're dealing with an AI, progression curve that is actually unlocking dramatically different capabilities at every point, right? And it's like moving faster than even Moore's law. And so it's really, it's like you're trying to predict exponential math with like a really unknown coefficient.
And by the way, these are the very circumstances that might give an edge to startups that are lean enough and have low burn and low headcount to navigate as the new tech unfolds, right?
I think, adapt. I think there is kind of a race between incumbents who obviously have a distribution and sometimes data advantage, which are really valuable in the, kind of in this, kind of world of AI. But they do have to innovate.
Are you an incumbent in this?
I would say context? We're kind of in between.
You're kind of
like
the
adolescent teen, we kind of, we've like maybe barely gotten past the pimply phase and like, but we're basically somewhere in between, right? And my point is like, I think the question will be, will the incumbents innovate in a real way fast enough and not just do like token things with AI, right? Like not just put AI on the website or say like, here's our AI offering, but it's not actually driving real value faster than the startups can go and like gain significant enough market share and like build enough of a durable, kind of advantage to, withstand when the kind of the big giants kind of come down at them. And I think we're kind of somewhere in between, which is we're obviously able to be a lot more agile than the big incumbents. We do have some more distribution advantage than a net new startup, but like we also have to still move quickly, right? We we don't want to be caught.
Yeah, let's talk about advice. One of the most important things a founder has to decide is who to take advice from on what types of topics. And it's usually the sign of an inexperienced founder when they indiscriminately absorb whatever advice gets thrown at them. And I think as investors and as advisors in the ecosystem, do no harm has to be the first rule that we follow. And you can do a lot of harm with bad advice.
For sure.
When you reflect on the last decade plus of Airtable, what's some bad advice that you were given by investors, board members, advisors, friends, whatever?
I think all advice is good in a different circumstance, probably. Maybe not all, but like a lot of advice is like good with a different set of circumstances. But I think it's incumbent on you as the recipient to kind of understand what the priors are of the person giving it to you, right? So like, we got a lot of advice early on to like not try to build a platform company and to just pivot to like one solution, right? Including from really great founders and operators like Mark Benioff. Like when I pitched him on Airtable, he was basically like, I think you should go fully into like healthcare, do like some like EMR thing. Like there's a very clear need for that.
That is the conventional advice. I think focus on a niche is the common
and by the way, he
advice,
probably wasn't wrong. Look at Viva, like that was a successful business. Like,
incredible.
It's like, not like a bad, piece of advice, but like clearly we were able to find a different way, building more of a platform business. Now we ended up having to do some solution-y things on top of it early on with like templates and different like PLG entry points, like people coming in, Googling for like one use case or another, and then landing on that template or landing on a marketing page for that use case. And even now, like we are doing a lot more solution selling, even if the underlying platform is kind of the same once we deploy or when you start the deployment. But that was a piece of advice that was right given a different set of circumstances. Like it probably would have been the necessary path if we were enterprise sales focused, because you can't enterprise sell a Lego kit that's all things to all people.
And
right?
how do you do that just as a founder? It's basically your first time founder. You had a company sold, but you're pitching Mark Benioff, legendary CEO. Why is Mark Benioff coming up so much in this conversation?
I work there. I have respect for them. They're a $30 billion revenue business.
So here's Mark telling you, focus on a niche. Every blog post about startups would say, focus, dominate a niche. And then you say, nah, I'm going to spend 2.5 years building a horizontal platform. Like, how do you develop conviction to go against the grain like that?
I think there were a couple products that had done something similar, like Dropbox. Obviously was a very horizontal product, but I think they were able to break past the conventional wisdom because it was such a stupidly easy product to use, right? I think if they had much more complexity to how you used it, they would have failed as a horizontal product. They would have had to go like down into some deep vertical, use case like DAM, where you could sell a lot more premium seats or premium solution, but it's more complex sales and deployment. But I think the fact that it was just so drop dead easy to use meant that even without like a crisp understanding of like what are the specific use cases each person is going to use it for, like you could use it for photos or document editing or kind of this team centric use case of like let's put all the resumes for recruiting into this folder and collaborate on that. But the fact that like it was so intuitive and you could just like show the thing, like share the actual file, share the actual folder, and like the second you came into it, you just got it, like allowed them to overcome, I think, what traditionally would have been like, like marketing too broadly to too many people.
So
right?
you found a couple of examples that provided inspiration to say, look, it is possible to blaze a different trail.
Yeah, and I think I also think like we tried to do a platform with some kind of use case marketing on top, right? Like the template. So I think in a way we tried to do both. I actually did read this book at the time called Relationship Marketing by Regis McKenna. He was like an early, Apple kind of marketer, and obviously very different time and like so on. But I was inspired by the fact that like they talked about marketing for the Macintosh, which I guess it's worth noting it wasn't a very big commercial success. So what do you want to extrapolate from that? But but they thought about it really as like this is a platform that is going to be so like broadly applicable. Like think about it's the first breakthrough personal computer that like anyone can actually use, right? Like everything before it was like more complicated, more like like the Apple II required like more of a real nerd to get to use. And so this was like the first mainstream computer. But like how do you market it? How do you sell it when like there's not you could verticalize it and say like we're just going to sell it for like engineering applications or for like graphics design applications. But of course that would be like a real shame, right? The whole point of it is like it's this broad computing paradigm. So I think in that case it's like you can still think about the different personas and use cases and even try to weave those into the storytelling of like, when they marketed that product, they actually did talk about specific use cases like, hey, you can do graphics design. Look at this beautiful like painted thing you did.
Yeah.
So I think we tried to do some of that as well, which is we didn't just talk about the platform in the abstract. We, wove in examples of use cases without committing to being just a vertical solution for that.
Well, and I think just to the meta thing on advice, like if you can find one example, like story from my own life is that when I was thinking about stopping my formal education journey, I reached out to like several dozen people and said, hey, should I just like not do college and just do real life university? And every single person said, no, college is really important. And one person, Brad Feld, the VC at Foundry Group, said, oh no, it's a total waste of time. You should just go do your own thing. And I clung on to that one, because that was my intuition.
Confirmation bias maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Because we all have instincts, right? And you had an instinct as a founder that this is the way to go, and you needed to find like in Dropbox is a great kind of example to drive you in that way. What bad advice on hiring, raising from VCs, things like that, as you reflect on the journey? What other things, mistakes you made, or people told you, oh, you gotta pitch your company this way, or you gotta hire this way?
Well, by the way, on that point, like I do think, I think founding a company is sort of like being an investor, where like if you do everything else that if you just do the consensus thing, you're not going to have alpha. You're not going to like generate like a breakout return, or in this case like a breakout innovation and like capture market in a profound way, right? So like Peter Thiel had the concept of like secrets in his whole like Stanford class lecture series, and I really liked that idea of like, okay, like you can't just like reinvent the wheel on every single thing, but you can have like a few key secrets where like you have deep conviction that hopefully is in some way like empirically grounded. So like it could be like market evidence, or like you worked in the industry, or like you have some unique take. It's not just conjecture, but like you really feel high confidence, high alpha, that there's some misunderstanding or mispricing in the market around this thing, right? And you kind of go all in on that. And of course you can validate that. I mean, your thing was clearly like, don't go to college, right? And like, I mean, most people would tell you that's wrong, but you clearly, I don't know how you developed that initial instinct, but like you had some kind of alpha and you got just enough confirmation of it from, the right person to where you're like, okay, like I feel confident about making this bet. I'm going to hit buy, right?
Yeah, and I think this idea, like I can almost imagine the slide. We think about this Village raising funds from LPs, but I think company is the same, which is like, here are the 5 consensus views that we hold. And then here's the one non-consensus view we hold really vigorously.
For sure.
But you can't reinvent the wheel on like every dimension, right? And generally the way everyone does something, or the life path that everyone takes, generally is the right path, right? As Bezos says about contrarians, Those
For sure.
contrarians are wrong.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Right. Markets are efficient.
It's like if everybody jumped off the cliff. Well, like, yeah, I mean, maybe there's like something to it, but like you don't want to just go jumping off cliffs on your own, right? Like,
indeed. But like the one area where or the one or two areas where you're truly different.
For sure.
Really. But I think when you articulate this to investors or to customers, so that you don't seem like a crazy person, or it's kind of reflexively contrarian because that's the high status thing these days, articulating like, no, we actually are consensus.
When I was growing up, it was called emo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you want to be consensus, and signaling that you actually are consensus on most things.
Yeah,
like gives you credibility to make the contrarian argument.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, I think that's right. You know, you don't want to come in and just be like the completely like alien spaceship to like the car that the customer's looking for.
Yeah.
You know, at the same time, like you don't want to just you want to come in with like a different point of view in the right ways, right?
Indeed.
For Salesforce, it was cloud, right? It was like, we're going to come in and we're going to tell the story of our belief system, which is all about like cloud software and the cloud model, just a superior way to build and deploy software, and you're going to get a better experience because of it. And in fact, all of this customizability would not be possible if it wasn't for this cloud, kind of model that we've taken, which at the time was pretty radical, right? Like, I mean,
so we're going to open it to questions. This is my last question for now, and then we'll open it up to you all. Howie, you're about to have a kid.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah.
You were raised by tiger parents.
More or less.
Your own description. What were you've said that the tiger parenting that you received was net positive for your own maturation. What were the pros and cons? And when you think about raising your kid, are you going to take a similar framework and drive them hard?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm not going to take the same framework. I think similar to the advice and the practices, right thing for the right time, right? I think what the parenting style that my parents, especially my mom, had was both born of kind of a survival mentality. A third generation, or my grandparents fled during World War II from Korea to China, and went through a lot of hardship during that time. There was near starvation at times, right? Mm-hmm. There was real, literally life or death survival. Then of course, growing up, through that era, Cultural Revolution. My parents grew up in kind of modest, circumstances. I grew up in very modest circumstances. So a lot of it was in Texas.
Okay.
But
we got some Texas. So
nice.
Anyone else from Texas here?
Awesome.
All right, yeah. Texas pride. Well, there'll be a meeting at the back.
All right, great. Yeah, Texan alums. But it's a lot of that was hey, you can't afford to go and just wander around to figure out what you want to do. You have to be driven and have a clear directive and purpose. And so I think that was the right mandate, the mission, given the circumstances, right?
Do your when did it take your parents to realize that Airtable was a successful company, or do they still think you should be a doctor?
No. My mom especially always kind of understood there's something to this whole tech and software thing, and I think she was
so
always
they were supportive of us.
Supportive for sure.
Okay,
I mean, actually, graduating from college. So first of all, I thought looking at all the statistics on great founders like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Zuck. They all dropped out of college, right? And so I was certain that graduating college would be horribly anti-correlated to startup success, founder success. And so I was really bummed to actually graduate from college and not have dropped out. I didn't find a good idea that was worth pursuing. But when I did graduate and I eventually had my idea for eTax and decided I wanted to go down that path and give up actually a job that I already had signed and kind of had lined up, that would have been a great job, paying well, blah blah blah.
But getting an offer and then not accepting the offer is kind of like dropping out of college in the sense if you get the status.
Oh, and worse, I actually I had the offer. I don't recommend this, and certainly don't recommend this if you're joining Airtable. Yeah. But so I had accepted this offer, and literally months after accepting it, and weeks, actually the day of the start date is when I had this pivotal moment where I really felt torn. I was should I make the leap and do my own thing? Should I just take this job at least for a while? And I mean, I literally it was such a big decision for me because I also didn't have a fallback. I didn't want to go back to my parents and need to rely on them because I knew they didn't have the luxury of being able to keep providing for me. So it was a really hard decision, and I basically delayed it almost by accident because I couldn't make a call until the day of, and then time ticked by. I was supposed to be there at 8 a.m. for orientation. It's 8 a.m. I'm like thinking like, do I want to go? Do I want to, at 9 a.m., like 10 a.m. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I think I got a recruiter call. They were like, are you okay? Are you not gonna are you on your way? Are you late?
Stuck in traffic.
Yeah. So, and then, in that moment, I just decided it was like the impetus I needed to make that call, and it was like, I'm really, really sorry. I know this is like gonna cause some distress for you, and it's day of. It's like kind of bad form on my side. Took accountability, but like, I'm really sorry.
We're not going to name the company, but it does rhyme with Rugel.
No, but like, I basically decided like.
But I think there's actually a really interesting insight there, which is why so many big deals and negotiations fall apart at the 11th hour, because people wait until the very end of a negotiation to say what they actually think, want, or believe.
Yeah.
And so like, it's an interesting question to make better decisions. Can we kind of force that in ourselves? Because that's how we can really tune into what we actually want.
For sure. No, I think that's right. And I mean, there is a fine balance between, being too impulsive and just like, quitting your job on a whim before you have like the right validation, before you have the right like alpha to go and like, start a company with conviction. But on the flip side, like, you don't want to wait, keep delaying it, because there's never a perfect time, right? So I think, it's kind of finding the in-between. I find that as now an operator and CEO at scale, like, the best way I would translate that into my practice of leadership is like trying to create urgency around everything that we do. Like, if there's ever a moment or a day or a meeting or like a project that I'm working on that doesn't feel urgent, I try to say like, why are we doing this? Either we don't understand the real thing that we're trying to like figure out, or we shouldn't be doing it. And I think that's a way of sort of like forcing yourself to make sometimes the hard calls. And it could be like, don't keep doing this, it's not worth it. Or it could be like, you got to pivot what you're doing. Like, and instead of delaying that by 6 weeks, because like it's the easier thing to not hurt people's feelings and say like, cut what you're doing and like, whatever, but like, do it now.
I think the mistake people make emotionally on decision making is they are waiting for themselves to feel ready. You just said there's never a good time.
Yeah.
And sort of a frame that I once thought of on this on the readiness concept was like, do things when you feel almost ready. And I heard this from someone who does a lot of skydiving. They said when you're a beginner skydiver and you go up on the plane, for your very first dive, the instructor will say, okay, on the count of 5, we're going to jump.
Yeah.
And what happens is most people, when you get to like 3 or 4, they say, no, don't push me out.
Yeah.
And so you go 1, 2, and then they push you out on 3, right?
Good to know.
and so like you'll never feel ready to jump out of the plane.
For sure.
And so the litmus test, and like you'll never feel ready to start a company or to ship this product or to make a bold decision. And if you keep waiting for peace and readiness, you'll wait too long.
Yeah.
So like almost ready is like the internal emotional barometer for action.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, there's a fair amount of discomfort that is just inherent in the founding and operating journey. Like I found, at least. I mean, if somebody else has had a very easyggoing time of it, like let me know how to do it. But yeah, I mean, like I think I've almost kind of just become tolerant of, and almost like, not that it's like masochistic, but like, you almost like start to enjoy the discomfort in a way, because like you've learned the right amount of discomfort to push yourself to, right? Like, like I remember like, in that 2.5 years we spent building the product, like I was always uneasy about like, oh, but like it's still not ready. We could spend more time building this, just another month. Like we need to build this one more thing. And that's probably the eternal thing with all MVPs. It's like at what point do you draw the line? And so, I think we kind of had to force ourselves at some point to draw the line and like push our, launch with discomfort. And I'm so glad we did, because like if we had waited until we got comfortable, it could have been like 5 years later, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think like,
wishing, having aversion around discomfort or fear or whatever is the path to unhappiness.
Exactly,
figuring out how to, but let's go back to your kids, because this is the thing that like every person I know who's like somewhat successful, they have kids, and they usually had a hard upbringing themselves.
Yeah.
And the thing they're worried about is, how am I going to make sure my kids work hard and like have to hustle and have some of the values that I grew up with. So how are you going to solve that?
Well, I don't actually need my kids or care about my kids like having the same level of like hustle that I do, because I think there are different like utility functions in life, right? Like you can define fulfillment, happiness, purpose, like, kind of life goals in different ways. And I think, again, like for me, that intensity and grit was like kind of a necessary mission because of like the circumstances. But, I feel fortunate that like hopefully my kids won't have to like have the same amount of grit, because like, they can have a little bit more buffer and leeway to like go and explore and like be, if they want to do creative pursuits, like great, like so I would encourage them to like find their
major
own
in
passion.
sociology and write poetry.
Sure, yeah, like great. Well, I mean, really prompt engineer AI to write poetry.
That's right. Yeah, not poetry. That's endangered. Howie, we really are grateful that you're part of the Village, and I appreciate you doing this for our founders and some great insights. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, I appreciate being part of the community.
Yeah, that's awesome.